Hungarian Folk Tales. The Two Princes with Hair of Gold. Once upon a time there was a young prince who left his home looking for a bride. He was riding through a village when three girls watched him pass. The eldest girl said, "If that prince married me, I would make him wear a linen shirt." That was a joke, of course. The middle girl said, "I would make him sleep on a sack of straw." And the youngest girl said, "Well, if he married me, I would give him 2 sons with hair of gold." The prince's coachman overheard all of this and he told his master. So the prince said, "Go and get the girl who said she would give me 2 boys with hair of gold." The coachman called the girl over and the prince told her to join him in his royal carriage. Time quickly passed and the young queen became heavy with child, but before she could give birth, the king had to go and fight. There was an old witch in the court who had teeth of iron and she had a daughter. She would have liked the king to have married her daughter, but when he married another, she hated the young queen very much. When the king went off to war, she said to herself, "Just wait, queen, you will pay for all of this." The day came when the queen gave birth to 2 beautiful sons with hair of gold. The witch with the iron teeth stole them and put 2 puppies in their place. Then she buried the 2 boys opposite each other in the ground around the fish pond. The king was told the news that the queen had given birth to 2 puppies and he had also lost the battle that day. This and the bad news about his wife made him very angry. He wrote a letter and sent it home. In the letter, he ordered that the queen and the 2 puppies should be thrown into the pond where a great whale lived. As soon as the messenger was sent away, he began to regret what he had ordered to be done. When the king arrived home from the battle, he married the witch's daughter. 2 trees bearing golden pears grew on the spot where the 2 princes with hair of gold were buried, and the king liked nothing better than to sit in their shade. The witch did not like this and told her daughter to tell the king to cut the pear trees down, and she nagged him until he had both trees cut down. From their wood 2 beds were made, one for the king and one for the queen. The witch ordered the splinters, twigs and branches to be burned. But no one noticed a passing goat that gobbled up 2 small twigs from the tree. When the queen and king were sleeping in their beds one night, the queen's bed asked the other, "Dear brother, is that weight not too heavy for you?" And the other bed answered, "It's not heavy at all, as my burden is my dear father. But mine's too heavy, as I have to bear my enemy." The witch was not asleep and she overheard the beds talking. The next morning she ordered her daughter to burn the 2 beds lest her sin come to light. The 2 beds were burned that very day. The witch with the iron teeth and her daughter were now convinced that they faced no more threats. But then the goat gave birth to 2 kids. The 2 little kids had hair of gold. The witch was shocked when she learned of this. She told her daughter to ask the king to have the 2 kids killed, and she could only recover if she ate their meat. The goat kids were killed, and the witch ordered that every strand of their golden hair should be cleared away. But as the kids' innards were washed in the stream, 2 little pieces turned into 2 goldfish. The 2 fish grew and grew until they were caught by a fisherman one day. He pulled the net to shore and his joy turned to shock when he saw the 2 goldfish turn into 2 handsome young men with hair of gold. two princes had been buried 17 years before, and so now the two young men were 17. They duly thanked the fisherman for catching them and asked him to take them to the king, as they knew a fine poem they wanted to recite for him. They knew they would be rewarded for their performance, and they promised to give this reward to the fisherman for his troubles. The fisherman shook all over with fear, but he agreed to take the two young men in the hope that he would receive a rich reward. The young men were announced to the king, and the king gave the order to let them in. The witch with the iron teeth saw what would happen, and she tried her best to keep them out. But the king eventually met the two youths in spite of all her tricks, and she tried to follow them in and convince the king not to believe the two young men. But the king resisted, saying, "Don't meddle, mother-in-law. This is my business and not yours." The two young men recited a poem to the king, and in that poem they told him their mother's story and their own. They told the king that the whale had swallowed their mother alive and that she was still alive inside the whale's belly. They told the king to catch the whale and they would recover their mother. They also asked the king to richly reward the fisherman for his good deed. The witch with the iron teeth constantly tried to interrupt the youths and did all she could to make the king disbelieve them. But the king paid all his attention to the two young men. The first thing the king did was to order that the whale be caught. The queen emerged from the whale alive, and the king begged her to forgive him. She had survived the ordeal intact. Then the king ordered his two sons and wife and the witch and her daughter to appear before the royal council. The king put the question to the council: "What does a witch deserve who tried to kill two boys and their dear mother, ruin their reputation and deprive a father of his family? What should her punishment be?" So the royal council ordered that the witch and her daughter should be tied to the tails of two horses and dragged through the city. Then they had to be chopped into four and their bodies nailed to the four corners of the city. The queen and her two sons begged for mercy for both of them, but to no avail, and the sentence was duly carried out. The king gave a rich reward to the fishermen. There was a fabulous feast, and the people of the land and the royal family lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Horse Egg. There once lived a peasant who found a giant pumpkin in the meadow. What on earth could this be, he thought. So he bent down, lifted the giant pumpkin up, felt it and smelt it, but he still had no clue what it was. So he took the pumpkin to the village council. The councillors were in the middle of an important meeting when the farmer walked in and plonked the giant pumpkin on the table. And this surprised them all. I have lived a very long life, but I have never seen anything like that before. I have experienced a lot in my life, but I have never come across anything like that before. And I'm not a young man either, but I really couldn't tell you what on earth that is. Then the village mayor added wisely, "Gentlemen, this peculiar object, judging by its shape, cannot be anything else but an egg." Of course, what else could it be? It must be an egg. The peasant agreed and added that the egg-like object had been warm when he first found it. The local mayor had a very clever mind, and so he wanted to know exactly what kind of egg this might be. The old village leaders thought it could possibly be a terrible green dragon's egg. However, the mayor was inclined to agree with the farmer, who said that he had recently seen a strange horse in the very same meadow. The village leaders liked the sound of this and said, "It must be so. Nothing other than a horse could have laid such a giant egg." "Good. So tell me, my friends, what should we do next?" "Why, you must catch it, of course." "Yes, but what animal could do it?" "All horses don't lay eggs, so they could never hatch it." Everyone thought hard what to do. But then the mayor had an idea. "Gentlemen of the council, if the local horses are too stupid to hatch an egg, then we, the village council, should do it. We, gentlemen, must hatch the giant egg. That's what I say." This sounded like a wonderful idea, and everyone nodded in agreement. The village mayor decided to set an example, and so he was the first to sit on the giant egg, and then the gentlemen of the council followed one after the other. And they would all be still sitting on it today if the people in the next village had not spread the rumour that it had gone bad under their bottoms. When they heard this, the local leaders protested and refused to sit on the egg for a day longer. This made the mayor very sad because he said he was sure he had felt the horse moving inside it. But the village leaders were convinced the egg was rotten and it smelled very bad. But each stuck to their own side of the story. In the end, the council voted and decided to take the egg to the top of a hill and roll it down onto the people of the village below who had teased them so. The men, women and children of the village all walked up to the top of a nearby hill and prepared to punish their neighbours with the stinking egg. Everyone pinched their noses and the mayor began to roll the egg. And the giant egg rolled down and rolled down the hill until it rolled into the bushes at the bottom. This is where it broke in two just as a rabbit ran out of the bushes. And all the villagers cried out, "There goes the horse! Come on, let's catch it!" And they all gave chase to the rabbit. Only the mayor stayed standing on top of the hill and muttered sadly to himself, "I told them that something was moving inside. We should have had the patience to sit on the egg for another day, and it would have grown into a fine, strong horse." Hungarian Folk Tales. The Jackdaw Girls. Once there lived a mother who had 12 daughters. The 12 girls were very unruly and each had a big mouth. They were always quarrelling with each other. There was never any peace in the house, and one day their mother decided that enough was enough, and so she said, "My ears are full with your quarrels. All of you should turn into jackdaws." They flew through the open door with such haste that they nearly poked her eyes out with their wings. They left the house and took to the air. They disappeared in a westerly direction. The mother became very sad as she missed her daughters very much, but there was nothing to be done. Then she discovered that she was expecting a baby, and when the time arrived, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. When the boy became a little older, he began to ask his mother, "Mother, have I never had a sister or a brother?" And his mother replied, "I have never had any other child except for you, my boy." But later on, the boy heard the talk in the village that he used to have 12 sisters who turned into jackdaws and flew away forever. "Mother, I have heard in the village that I used to have 12 sisters. I will not rest until I find them all." His mother tried to keep the boy at home, but to no avail. So then she filled a sack full of food and let him leave. As the boy was walking, he caught sight of a hermit's shack in the distance, and he arrived there just as the sun was setting. An old woman lived in the little shack, and he had never seen an older woman in his life before. He greeted her. "Good day, old lady." "You are fortunate that you greeted me politely, or else I would have eaten you up. What are you doing in this place that has never been seen by man or beast before?" The boy then told the old woman that he was searching for his 12 sisters who had turned into jackdaws and flown away. "Good. In the morning we shall make inquiries about them." Then she made supper for the boy and they went to sleep. Early the next morning, the old woman stood outside with the boy beside her and she blew hard on an old whistle. All the reptiles of the world gathered around in a matter of moments. The old woman asked the reptiles about a flock of jackdaws that never mixed with the other birds. None of the reptiles had any useful answers to her questions, and so the old woman ordered the reptiles to go home. So they all slithered away. The boy bid farewell to the old woman and left her. After a day's walk, he again arrived at a hermit's shack. He entered the shack and saw an old woman even older than the first. "Good evening, old lady," he said. You are fortunate that you greeted me politely, otherwise I would have ordered bears to tear you apart. What are you doing in this place that has never been seen by man or beast before? The boy told her the aim of his search. Good. Maybe tomorrow morning we shall learn something more about your sisters. The boy went to bed and soon fell fast asleep. The next morning, the old woman stood outside the front door with the boy and blew hard on an old whistle. All the four-legged beasts of the world gathered around the house in a matter of moments. Do you know anything about 12 jackdaws that always fly alone? We know nothing of such birds, and we have never heard of them before, the four-legged beast replied. So the old woman sent them home with a wave of her hand. Then the boy became very sad indeed. He thanked her for her troubles and continued on his way. As he was walking, he spotted a third hermit's shack atop a huge rock, and he arrived there as the sun was setting. He walked into the shack and saw that this woman was even older than the two before her. Good evening, old lady. You are fortunate that you greeted me so politely, or else I would have had eagles tear you to shreds. What are you doing in this place that has never been seen by man or beast before? So the boy told her the story of his journey. Don't be sad, my child. I am sure that tomorrow we shall hear something about your sisters. Then she made the boy something to eat and made his bed. As soon as the sun came up, the two of them stood at the front door and the old woman blew hard on a whistle. All the winged creatures of the world gathered around the house in a blink of an eye. The old woman inspected the birds and then said angrily, "Someone is missing." Soon a raven arrived and one of its wings was bleeding. As soon as I heard your whistle, I began to fly here, but while I was flying, I saw a tall red tower. Tower was so tall that it stuck up through the clouds. And the noise the jackdaws made in that tower was worse than anything I had ever heard before, so I decided to rest a while and listen for myself. People passing by made mention of 12 jackdaws. They said that they had been living there for some years now and never let anyone go near them. But as I was eavesdropping, a hunter came along and shot a bullet into one of my wings. That is why I was late to arrive. Yours was the story we needed. You other birds can go now. So now you know where to go. Your efforts will not be in vain. When you arrive outside the tall red tower, lay these bones down on the ground and think of me. He set out once more, and after many days he arrived at the tall red tower. He did as the woman told him, and the two bones grew into a long ladder, and he could climb up to the jackdaws. He entered a large room where he found 11 of the jackdaws away, and the 12th in the form of a girl. The others were away collecting food. The young girl was afraid at first, but soon she became braver. She showed the boy around their home and explained all that she knew. Then the boy confessed that he was in fact their brother, and he had found them at last. Then they heard the noise of the jackdaws flying home again. So the young girl said, "Hide yourself quickly, because if I am unable to explain who you are, they will surely peck your eyes out." So the girl hid the boy in the 7th room. The 11 jackdaws soon arrived home, where they did a somersault and turned back into girls. Then the eldest of all said, "I can smell the presence of a stranger." And she tossed furniture around in her frantic search for the stranger. Then the youngest girl calmed her sisters and said, "When we left our father's house, our mother was heavy with child. She gave birth to a boy. That boy has spent many months looking for us, and now he is here to take us home to our mother and father. I hid him because I was afraid you would do him harm, because you didn't know why he was here or why he had come." Then the girls went to their brother, and they all embraced him. Before starting home, they all swore to always be good from now on. They climbed down the ladder, and the boy led them home. When they returned to the home of their birth, their mother and father were overjoyed to see their 12 daughters again. From that day on, the girls behaved so very well that they were the pride of their village. All 12 of them found a husband within the year, and all got happily married. And their brave brother found a pretty girl to be his bride, and they all lived happily ever after.